Hey, it's you, and it's me. And here we are once again. It's Tuesday, my time. May not be Tuesday when you're watching this, but that's okay. Let me say something. We are continuing on in our conversation. So, hopefully, if you are one of our families at Royal Palms, you have jumped in on the 30-30 challenge. And one of the things that we really believe at Royal Palms is that the Bible teaches that moms and dads, it's your job to teach your kids and raise them up in the faith. We want to come alongside you. And so these videos are going to come alongside you, right? So hopefully you're going through Cornerstones. We really highly would recommend going through the book Cornerstones with your families. These are great. They got great little questions in there. And so if you've been tracking along with us up to this point, we're going through this question right here. Question 9. What did God say would happen to Eve for her part in the first sin? What did God say would happen to Eve for her part in the first sin? Now, listen up. This is great because as you talk about this with your kids, most people, I think, get it, right? That Adam and Eve sinned. We kind of think about Eve being the only one. We've got to remember a little bit later on, understand that, Adam's the ultimate to blame for that. Because he let his guard down as he was leading his family. Now, we need to talk about what are the pieces of the curse, right? So what is said would happen to women as a result for what happened and what Eve did. And so this is important. So some of you, it's going to be a little tricky. Like I tried this question with my kids recently. Some of it's hard to, depending on the age of your kid, if you're going to talk about this, I think there's certain pieces you can get. You're going to have to find where that is for your family of how much you talk about this. But, let me give you the answer, and then I'll tell you why it's a little tricky depending on the age. Okay, so here's the answer. God said Eve would have increased pain giving birth, and her relationship with Adam would become difficult. Okay, God said Eve would have increased pain in giving birth, and her relationship with Adam would become difficult. So look, I know in my young daughter, right, she understands, at least has been told that giving birth is hard. And she also knows about, apparently, epidurals, because she says, what about that thing that makes it where it doesn't hurt, right? So, so she gets that piece too. But here's the first thing we should make clear. Satan gets his dole for what he gets his special curse towards him and words given to him in Genesis 3 for what he did. Eve gets words to him, and then there's going to be words given to Adam. Now, with Eve, here's what we find out. Because of her, the big thing is going to be, right, that it's going to hurt in childbearing. Now, here's what I don't get, and I don't understand, and I don't know. Was it easy before, right? Was it meant to be, and there you go, there's a baby. Who knows? That would be great. But at this point, for women who have had babies and are planning on having babies, you can blame Eve for why it hurts, right? This is part of the punishment, is from now on. Now, there is a piece to that. That pain that comes with that childbirth is a reminder of the fall, right? It's a reminder of what took place. But it's also the blessing of that childbirth is a reminder that despite that pain, God does provide. Now, there's the other piece of this I think is a little trickier to explain, and it just depends on how much you can. I think your older kids will get this because your older kids have already figured out by now, right, that mom and dad fight, and that there's the occasional argument. Unless you guys are super good about, never showing any tension between the two. I think kind of the general way that, it comes out, right? It comes out as you're trying to kind of work on being in the house. Some of this stuff comes out. So, they're not oblivious to that. But I want to show you these verses, right? And I want to talk about what the Bible teaches. Notice that in the text, right here in Genesis 3, God says to the woman, I will intensify your labor pains. You will bear children with painful effort. So that's the first piece. Women are going to have painful childbirth. Now notice the second piece. Your desire will be for your husband, and yet he will rule over you. Now some read that as simply like this. Oh, the poor woman, her desire will always be to just love her husband, but the man will dominate and crush her. That is not actually how that is meant to be read. Let me give you the reasons why. I'll show you an interesting piece. So Moses, who's writing this, notice how he writes and uses that word in the next passage. So you get to the passage of Cain versus Abel in chapter 4, and notice what God says to Cain. The Lord said to Cain, "Why are you furious? And why do you look despondent? If you do what's right, won't you be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must rule over it." Now, understand this, that it's saying, Cain, sin wants you. It wants to dominate you and rule over you, but you've got to make sure that you rule over it. So here's what Moses is saying that God has said, is that the marriage relationship at this point now is going to be out of whack. That because of the fall, the way that husband and a wife are going to relate to each other is, we have the biblical ideal of how marriage should look. Look at Ephesians 5 to see how that plays out. But at the same time, recognize that because we're fallen, guess what? Now there's a battle every now and then for who's really running the show. See, the biblical way of how it was meant to be was in Ephesians 5. You'll see that the husband and wife are a team, and yet the husband is the head of the house. What's going to take place because of the fall is that now what will happen is that place will not be accepted easily. It's not one that's going to be easily given over. In fact, the battle will now be for who is really going to run the show. And so it says your desire is going to actually want to rule on top of him, to beat him, to you run the show, but he is going to continue to dominate you. And so we're going to see that the relationship is not going to be one anymore of it's easy and the husband and I work together, but the husband leads the family, though they are equal in God's eyes. The one going forward will always be a back and forth of who is really running it. And so a lot of marital troubles are going to come back because now, as a result of sin, that bond is going to be broken. That bond of peace, of submission, of how it should work is going to be shattered because sin has been let in. And so just know that, you can talk to your kids about that, but you can understand that fighting sometimes, some of that comes from this curse, right? Is that there's going to be always a back and forth, and it's not always pretty, and it's not something we should just accept, right? That's what happened as a result of sin. We don't need to let that be the case forever. We should try to shoot for what the biblical ideal is. And so just know that when we talk about this, there's some big pieces to this. Now, you're going to see not only is the marriage relationship affected because of Eve, but if you try and go through the rest of those questions, you look at the next of the verses, you're going to see the whole world is going to be impacted through the curse given to Adam, because he's ultimately the one responsible for what's taken place. All right, so I hope this helps. Like I said, this is a tricky one to kind of work through with younger kids, but you can talk about the way that sin has impacted and how that means that sometimes, you're going to see fighting, You're going to see someone sometimes yelling, sometimes, trying to arguments about things. My kids pointed out to me immediately, they said, is that why sometimes mom has rules and then you have your rules that are always different from hers? And that is true, because they do figure out, like with me, sometimes my wife will have rules about snacks and things like that. And then when I come into the house, and it's like a weekend, right? And they're like, hey, Dad, can we have some of these? I'm like, yeah, sure. What's up? And it's because, I haven't, really been talking through. We haven't gone through that. But they were trying to think about it in terms of that, right? They're trying to think about some of the disagreements that might come about that. And so, it's going to be trickier with younger kids. Older kids, I think it's going to be easy to get. And even in your own marriage, maybe look and see, you look and see, is the relationship right? Who's really leading? And is it more of an Ephesians 5 approach to your marriage, or is it more of a Genesis 3 and living out and experiencing the curses within your marriage? All right, hope that helps. Talk to you guys later. Hang in there. Have a good week. Bye-bye.